Okay, so for my adaptation of Catcher in the Rye, I chose to do the scene of Phoebe and Holden when Phoebe is on the carousel and it starts to rain, as well as the scene, the last chapter of the book, which describes a conversation between Holden and a psychoanalyst, as well as a visit from his older brother, GB. So, Salinger's presentation of this material really spoke to me because I love the symbolism of the section with the carousel because I felt that there was so much symbolism and it was so powerful with Phoebe putting the hat on Holden, his red hunting hat, as well as the rain and him not moving. And that really spoke to me because I felt like you could do so much with that and it was such a powerful scene of the book because it led you to so many different things and um, I really liked it, especially because at the end of the chapter ends with Holden describing how happy he is in that moment, and throughout the book he keeps making um, dropping things about how he's depressed and this makes him depressed and this and that. And so I thought this scene was really powerful because of he describes how happy he is. And so that's one of the ways that this scene spoke to me. The last chapter really spoke to me because it it was so short and it wrapped everything up so quickly, and I loved how broad it was left because it left the reader with you could interpret many different things out of those last 2 pages. It brought together the whole book, but it left the audience with a lot of open-ended thoughts and questions. And so I chose to do that section over any other because I felt that there were a lot of different ways to adapt the piece and make it my own. So for the scene with Phoebe and the carousel, kept most of Salinger's works. I made the conversation a little more casual, and instead of, I think in the book they're in the zoo, but in my adaptation they're in Central Park. But other than that, that scene I pretty much kept the same as it is in the book, just in a different format. But for the last chapter, I changed I changed it a little bit. So instead of just Holden instead of just having him be a voiceover and him just saying what is said in the book, um, I just I put into dialogue a conversation between him and the psychoanalyst. I also put into dialogue a conversation between him and GB. And then at the very end of the scene, in my adaptation, um, I show Holden writing in a red journal at a desk. He then closes it, walks over to his closet, and pulls his red hunting hat out of his coat pocket. He puts it on and then lies down in his bed, and I have the camera rolling out, zooming out, and it's a voiceover of those last few sentences of the book because I think they're so powerful about him describing, telling his story and how he says you shouldn't tell anybody anything because then you start to miss everybody. So that's kind of how I changed that chapter of the book to make it my own in my adaptation. And I changed that because I thought that with the red throughout the book, I kept that a similar theme, him writing in a red journal. And then I also had him pulling the red hunting hat out of his own jacket pocket to kind of relate to Phoebe pulling the hat out of his pocket and putting on him, but now he's putting it on himself. To, in my perspective, him symbolizing him being able to help himself now. I think this would be a difficult piece to produce into a feature-length adaptation. I think that it can be interpreted so many different ways, and so it would be very cool to make your own, but I think I didn't realize how hard it was to make a screenplay until I had to make one. It was, once I got going, it was very, very fast for me. But at the very beginning, it was difficult for me to come up with how I want it to format and how I wanted to figure out the dialogue and the directions and what they were going to be doing. But for somebody who does that for a job, I think an easier, this would be easier for them, obviously. But um, yeah, it would be an interesting piece because every person can interpret scenes different ways and really make them their own.